Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another To The Point podcast. Everybody's doing well on this Thursday. Settle in. We got a lot to talk about today. The NHL season is back. We have 2 nights of hockey already in the books. A lot of headlines actually after 2 games. No hot takes. I'm sure there's people out there writing articles about how the sky is falling in Tampa Bay and Jack Campbell is the established number 1 goaltender in Toronto, which we'll get to. But there are things you see players that jump out to you and you say, could this guy have a big season? There's a few guys from me watching last night that I was really impressed. And maybe it's one night. Could very well be. But we'll dive into all that. We got Thursday night football tonight. Bucks, Eagles. On the surface, should be a blowout, but the Bucks defense is battered. Murphy Bunting, Levante David, Jason Pierre-Paul, Shaq Barrett, potentially all out this evening. No Gronk on the offense. So maybe we get a game tonight on Thursday Night Football on Fox. We'll see. We'll touch on that in this podcast. I'm going to have some conversations today that I'm not hesitant to have in this podcast because even though you guys are listening to me, but I'm talking to my listeners and I feel like we're having a dialogue, and I always encourage people to jump into the conversation. You can reach out to me. You can comment on our socials. I'm going to talk about the Jon Gruden incident. I'm going to talk about Kyrie Irving, him and his vaccination stance. This might be a polarizing topic, but this is to the point. We get there. I'm not afraid to go anywhere in sports. I talked heavily about Black Lives Matter when that was happening. That was important to me. And what's happening with Jon, there's a whole lot to divulge with the whole Jon Gruden incident that I want to dive into today. And Kyrie Irving, it's pretty simple to me, but yet society continues to have this debate on and on and on. And I'd like to just simplify it today. And then this evening, I'll also be recording a podcast with a friend of the show, Matt Wright. We'll talk about everything in the world of football. We'll talk about the start to the NHL season. He's a big Rangers fan. They really threw a game away last night, and we'll dive into that as well. But yeah, so we'll touch on NHL, we'll touch college football, the Final Four right now, and preview this week's NFL games highlighted by Chargers, Ravens, Bears, Packers, Arizona at Cleveland, and Chiefs actually visiting the Washington football team is actually a sneaky good game for me. But the NHL season has commenced. Off season's full of, was that a good move? Will that work out? How will Oliver Ekman-Larsson fit in Vancouver? Will the Toronto Maple Leafs miss Zach Hyman? How big of an impact and how will he gel with the best player in the game, Connor McDavid? And through the first 2 nights of the season, you can't answer those questions yet. But you can look at play. You can look at preparation. I said this to Seamus on the Breaking Bad podcast. I expected the Tampa Bay Lightning to lose Tuesday night, which they did. They didn't show up to the rink. They lost 6-2. It was closer in a 6-2 game, but they just didn't have it. Ryan McDonough iced the puck must have been 8 times in that game. He couldn't complete a pass to save his life. Do I think that's going to continue? No, because I think Ryan McDonough was the Tampa Bay Lightning's best defenseman last year in the postseason, and that includes Victor Hedman. I think Andre Vasilevsky will rebound and have better games coming up because he's the best goaltender in the world. That doesn't change the fact the Pittsburgh Penguins won a game on the road in Tampa Bay on opening night. Sans Crosby, Sans Malkin, Sans Jake Gensel. Impressive nonetheless. But what can you really dive through that game? That Tampa wasn't ready. That Pittsburgh came up with some good effort. Tristan Jarry made some good saves. Now jumping to the late game. The preview, the start of the franchise of the Seattle Kraken. Vegas jumps out on them to a 3-0 lead. They come back, tie it at 3, end up losing 4-3. But I believe the Kraken are going to be a team that's going to be in the fight the whole year. I think the Seattle Kraken will make the playoffs in their inaugural season. And night 1, minus 5 regulars that will be in their lineup due to COVID protocols, they nearly upset one of the most consistent teams in all of hockey. Vegas, is going to win the Pacific Division. They're going to win 50-plus games. Mark Stone is just going to be Mr. Consistent. And on Tuesday night, Max Pacioretty continued to score goals, which he's done his whole career. And yet, you look at Seattle. Philip Grubauer, you like putting the captaincy on Mark Giordano. No-brainer. But Seattle has something that Vegas has. And that's a chip on their shoulder. There are franchises that you can say have that chip on their shoulder. Oddly enough, I think Tampa still has it. I think they want that third cup, so it's put on their shoulder. They have that pressure that they put on themselves. Media can say teams like the Toronto Maple Leafs, teams like the Colorado Avalanche have that chip on their shoulder. To me, that's not evident yet, especially in Toronto's case. If they've had a chip on their shoulder, they've had it since this team's been together, which has been 4 to 5 years. And if pressure tells you anything, this team folds under pressure. But Seattle, sometimes you need to build that in. Jimmy Johnson, it's the late 90s, just from reading Skip Bayless's books, but he put pressure on his Dallas Cowboys. They had a chip on their shoulder. Troy Aikman couldn't throw the ball. One in 15, his first 16 starts in the NFL, was a bust. He couldn't throw the ball. They couldn't block. Well, Jimmy Johnson comes in, calls players out, and even after winning one Super Bowl, the team knew how good they were, but they also knew the work ethic that had to be put in. And sometimes getting close to that ultimate goal is enough to push you over the line. And what will be interesting this year is to see the teams that have that drive the entire regular season. And it's not just, okay, we won this many games, but it's how you play going into the playoffs. It's how you play the whole season. You're going to lose games. You're going to have stinkers. The New York Rangers had it last night, but they play this evening on a back-to-back. The second game is, how do they respond against the Dallas Stars? That's important to me. They started Alexander Georgiev last night. Why? Gerard Gallant, different thinker, new head coach. Is Igor Shesterkin the goalie going forward? But who has that chip on their shoulder? Those are the teams that go the farthest. The New York Islanders are never given respect. They've been to back-to-back conference finals and nobody would know it. It's quiet. It's eerily quiet. They were a goal away from defeating the Tampa Bay Lightning this past year. Yanni Gourde scored a short-handed goal in Game 7. They lost 1-0. With a parade of players that most hockey fans wouldn't even know. Most Canadian hockey fans wouldn't even know. Who's Josh Bailey? Ryan Pulock sends an 8-year deal. Who's Ryan Pulock? I don't know. Who's Adam Pelech? I don't know. Oh, we know Jordan Eberle from the World Juniors. Great. But it's the teams that say, well, we're not talked about. Since John Tavares has left, we've made it to 2 conference finals. He hasn't won jack squat. But yet, who gets talked about more? I believe the New York Islanders still have a chip on their shoulder. A team to look out for. And this is a team I've even overlooked talking in the podcast, so it's my fault too. The Dallas Stars are an interesting team to watch out for because I believe that team has a chip on their shoulder. They went through hell and back against Tampa Bay 2 years ago in the bubble. Tyler Seguin had to have a major offseason surgery. Jamie Benn was hurt. Ben Bishop hasn't played in, seems like, over a year. They were banged up. But they never, in my mind, they think, and this is all that matters is what you think. we didn't get our rightful chance to try to do it again, to run it back. We didn't get that opportunity. Now, Jamie Alexiak is gone. They've had people come and go. However, Braden Holtby, Anton Hudobin, not the most solid net minding duo, mind you, but Miro Heiskanen, he can play. Tyler Seguin, Alexander Radulov. What did Ben, Seguin, Radulov, what do these guys have in common? Seguin won a cup in Boston, but how much credit does he get for it? Very little. Do people even remember that he was on that team? Probably not. He was a kid. He was healthy scratch throughout the playoffs. And even though he won that cup rightfully, how much appreciation does he get for it? Does he feel justified? And does he feel that he got his true appreciation? I guarantee you for Tyler Seguin, winning a Stanley Cup in Dallas would mean a whole lot more than that Stanley Cup he won in Beantown. But looking at this season and finding out the winners and really assessing who's going to get there is how you play on a nightly basis. Because yes, you're going to get your ass kicked, but how do you respond from that ass kicking? Can you bring the fight physically? Showing fight on some, not every night's going to be physical. And there are games that just in the NHL anymore, the hit count should be 0-0. And that's not an exaggeration. But watching last night's Toronto-Montreal game, I liked that the Toronto Maple Leafs brought fight. Brendan Gallagher was one of the most important players last night. People don't like Brendan Gallagher. I get it if you're a Leaf fan. But he's a really good hockey player. He pisses people off. The fact that fans don't like him means that he's a very good hockey player. He's an agitator. He gets under your skin. But what did the Leafs do? They weren't going to take it last night. In the past, they just let it happen. That wasn't happening. You saw some pushback. And it wasn't just Jake Muzzin by himself with 1634 and everybody else hiding behind number 8. You saw guys like Bunting, Nick Ritchie come out and pump up their chest and say, get out of my crease. Do not touch Jack Campbell. And even in the game, Jack Campbell taking a swipe at Brendan Gallagher when he hit him passing by. I love seeing that. Because it might be run and gun now. It might be you got 50 feet to take a shot. It's not going to be that in the playoffs. We know that. That's why I said last year the Montreal Canadiens are built for the playoffs, which they were. Made it to the Stanley Cup final. I didn't think they'd get that far, but I did think they were a very viable playoff team. But I like seeing that from a Leafs team that they added a more physical team last year, but you need to show that earlier. You need to have that edge. And maybe they're finding that chip on their shoulder that will help them and fuel them to actually win a playoff series, to be competitive, to be a team with fight. And not fight with the fist. Just have some fight. Care. In Game 7 last year, I didn't think they cared. After Brendan Gallagher scored that goal, they were there. It was over for them. This team gives up too easy. You see them play the Boston Bruins, even in the regular season in the past, they give up. Austin Matthews drops his head. Don't drop your head. You don't need to play sports. You just know this in life, listening to anyone that you respect. This is just good advice. If you go into something in life, it could be sports, it could be throwing a rock in the river, it could be taking a shit. If you believe you're going to fail, you will. That's just the bottom line. Every night you go into a game, you should truly believe that you're going to win. And it's not just, oh, yeah, I think we're going to win. Yeah. You need to believe it in your core that you're going to win. If you have any bit of doubt, you might as well not even show up to the rink. And having that chip the whole year to say, all these people are doubting us. People are angry that we're making this much money. Fuck them. Let's bring it. That can be for the Dallas Stars. That could be for the Toronto Maple Leafs. It should be for them. It should be for the St. Louis Blues. People are writing them off. 2019 won a Stanley Cup. So what? They can't win. They can't be back in the title picture just because Jake Allen's gone? Who's their backup goalie? Didn't play that year in the playoffs. Petrangelo's gone. You still got Colton Parayko. You still got the Conn Smythe winner. Tarasenko's still there. He can still play, I think, if his shoulders hold up. Okay, Vince Dunn's department. Who cares? You have Torrey Krug, who's better. Why shouldn't you believe that? There are only a few teams that should truly be in despair mode. Buffalo, your season's over before it started. Arizona, hit the Lynx. Detroit, even though I think Detroit can take steps this year, I don't believe they can make the playoffs, but I do believe Morris Seider can win the Calder Trophy. I do believe Alex Nedeljkovic can change the culture when it comes to net mining and being competitive night in, night out. So that's more, but you're playing for years ahead. You're playing for culture. Ottawa should believe that they can compete for a playoff spot. And you look, they play the Leafs this evening. They play the Leafs on Saturday. For both of these teams, and I mean this sincerely, reigniting this rivalry is a good thing. And it does not have to be fights. That's archaic. I get it. I still enjoy fights. Don't get me wrong. I'll watch a good fight. But it doesn't have to be. It's just throwing it body check. It's not illegal. Richie, you're a big dude. Go out and hit. Like Nikita Zaitsev is not a physical guy. His game is going to be affected if you hit him. On the other side, if you're Ottawa, Rasmus Sandin has the puck, finish your check every time. Make him not want to be in the NHL anymore. You don't got to hurt him, but make him earn it. And forever, this was a rivalry. In the days of Darcy Tucker, Chris Neal, Matt Sandin and Daniel Alfredsson, who were the two stars of the team, had hatred. Daniel Alfredsson was hated in Toronto. Who's hated in what Ottawa Senators hated in Toronto? I mean, I realize that you wouldn't even hear the boos in Toronto because that crowd was so quiet last night. So are Leafs fans, just the truth. Who is it? There's no rivalry. I'm hoping Toronto and Montreal can reignite the rivalry because there just isn't one right now either. Even though last night was a good start. Gallagher drives the bus there. But so the big point here is find that chip on your shoulder. Don't give in from day one. You have for Toronto, you have all the talent. For Dallas, for teams like St. Louis, LA, don't have a defeatist attitude. Should be very optimistic. You're in a weak division. You've upgraded. You added one of the best defensive centers in the NHL. You still have, in my opinion, one of the best defensemen in the NHL, and Drew Doughty, who I believe would be extra motivated to make Team Canada on the Olympic team. Go earn it. You open up against Vegas tonight. Now, just looking at the first couple games, I never thought, even once in this 82-game season, that I thought Pierre Engvall would be the best player on the ice for the Toronto Maple Leafs. But in my opinion, he was last night. He was all over the puck. He rarely made a mistake. He scored a goal. To me, scoring a goal, you don't have to be the best player on the ice to score a goal. That's a myth. I'll let the stat nerds and people that don't really know the game look at it that way. Plus minus, the archaic people can love that. I just watched the game. It's called eye test. To me, he was Toronto's best player. Bill was good too. Bill Nylander. Engvall was the best player. I look at Montreal. Josh Anderson, yes, I love him, but you notice him every time he's on the ice. Josh Anderson and Brendan Gallagher. Now, it doesn't mean they're going to be the best player every night. But I expect big things from Josh Anderson, and it excites me to see him play well in the first game. It excites me that Pierre Engvall Ilya Mikheyev is injured. He's out 2 months. Can you make an impact? It's a huge opportunity for you. Earn another contract. Maybe it's not in Toronto. Go somewhere else. But this is a huge opportunity for you to make a mark. And one problem that it's not just last night, but I look at Toronto and I look at Montreal and they have a similar problem. Christian Dvorak, I'm going to wait and see. But Montreal's weak at center. I mean, they lost Danault. They lost Jesperi Kotkaniemi in the offseason. They're weak at that position. I love Suzuki. I think he's Bergeron 2.0. But after Suzuki, Dvorak, like I said, we got to wait and see if he can play. Jake Evans, I like in that fourth line slot. He's got a chip to his game that I enjoy watching. That line actually played very well last night, the Evans fourth line with Armia, who's such an effective player. But it's a weak at center. Then I look at Toronto. Obviously, they need Matthews to come back. Then they'll have Tavares. But after those two, I don't mind Alex Kerfoot as a player. I don't really like him, to be honest. No, I shouldn't have said that. I don't really love Alex Kerfoot as a player. If I had a choice, if I could have him on my team or not have him, I wouldn't have him on my team. But I hate him at center. I hate him at center because I think I could beat him in an arm wrestling match, and I don't lift weights. Just pointing that out. Do a lot of cardio. Don't lift weights. He's too weak to play center. He gets bullied. I don't mind him on the wing because he's creative with the puck, but he shouldn't be the guy chasing over this because he's not winning any of these puck battles in the corners, and he doesn't go into the corner to get the puck in the first place. This wasn't just looking at it last night. I've watched this guy a ton. Obviously, him for Kadri and Barry's a debacle of a trade, but if you want to keep him on your team, you're Sheldon Keefe. You like him. You're Dubas. He fits Dubas to a T. He's a small little guy, forward. No, just small little guy. Put him on the wing. And I would personally, I mean, he's got to earn this, but you got to give guys opportunities. Like, to me, tonight, Travis Dermott should be a healthy scratch and Timothy Liljegren should play with Sandin. That might sound, but it's game 2 of the season. You need to try. Travis Dermott playing this whole year is not your best option. You'd rather have Liljegren, in my opinion, because you know what Travis Dermott is. He has his limitations. You've seen him play almost 200 games in the NHL. He's like Cody Ceci in Edmonton. You know what he's going to bring. If he has a really good defensive partner, he can have a good season, which I think he might in Edmonton, which we'll get to in a minute. But I just think Pierre Engvall at center could work. He's a winger by proxy, but you might want to try him at center because Kerfoot is not the answer long term. But I credit Jack Campbell, looked great last night. We still got to wait and see how he keeps going. By no means did he establish himself as number 1 goaltender. If that's a headline today, don't read it. It's a stupid article. But he couldn't have played better his first start. So kudos to him. Leafs get a win. They got Ottawa tonight. And Ottawa obviously signed Brady Tkachuk today to a 7-year deal worth $8.24 million a season. No signing bonus, which is a big deal for Ottawa because they are cheap. But good deal for both sides. Obviously, Ottawa gets the term. Brady gets over $8 million. And I believe he'll be the captain of the team next season. They didn't name one this season. I think the start of camp next year, he'll be the captain of the Ottawa Senators. I don't believe he'll be in the lineup. I haven't heard anything yet. But I suspect he'll be in the lineup against Toronto on Saturday in the back half of the home and home, which everybody's been loving so far this year. After we've seen Toronto play Montreal and Ottawa throughout the preseason. Couldn't have scheduled a team from the States. Maybe. New York couldn't have come in. Nevertheless, gotta love it. But hey, we'll watch it. There's other games, and we'll flip to that one. The back half of the evening. Well, before we get there, Austin Matthews won the Rocket Richard last year. He's odds-on favorite to win it again this year. Makes total sense. He's a great goal scorer. His instincts. He's got the best wrist shot in hockey. He's great at getting to open areas. Fantastic hockey player. I had him ranked 7th on the 10 best players in the game. But I feel like coming into this year, it was a cakewalk that he was going to win the Rocket, the most goals in the NHL. Now he's injured for the first 3 games. Who know? Just as of now, could be longer. He's had an injury history. He's not the most durable player ever, and I do think there's other threats out there. I believe before his career is over, Connor McDavid will win a Rocket Richard Trophy. He just gets too many opportunities, and he gets too many points. I believe it'll happen. I talked about my pick before the season, David Pasternak, who's already won a Rocket Richard, but the guy is just a lethal goal scorer. He's one of the best players in the game as well. And he plays on a line that scores over close to 40% of Boston's goals the last couple of years. So he gets a lot of looks, and he's also a power play specialist like Austin Matthews. But then there's this guy in Washington who entered last night the six all-time in goals with 730. And that would be one Alex Ovechkin. And, being 36 years old, he can't win the award. He can't. But a game-time decision last night, and the grade 8 goes off for 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points. 3 power play goals for that Washington power play that starts off red hot. Now, this is one hot night. Like I said, it's not an overreaction. I'm not saying Alex Ovechkin's going to win the award, but the fact that he was never even really mentioned is just flat out insulting to me. In my opinion, he's the greatest goal scorer in the history of the game. For his era, what he's done, and Washington goes 3 for 5 on the power play last night with no Backstrom. Oshie being the bumper. Ovechkin scoring on the power play. Oshie scoring on the power play. Justin Schultz scoring on the power play. They're dynamic, but why can't Ovechkin win this? I think he's right there. To me, Matthews should have been the front runner. Ovechkin should have been second. Pasternak, who I love, would have been third in the running for me when it comes to odds, if we're talking Vegas. But if you want to take a futures bet on who's going to win the Rocket Richard, I wouldn't mind throwing a little bit of dough on Alex Ovechkin, because the guy, people know where he's going to be in the power play since his career started. He's in his office. He does not move, yet he still continues to score from there. And he's 9 goals away from passing Brett Hull for 4th all-time in goals. I still believe he thinks he can catch Wayne Gretzky. Re-signing his 5-year deal signaled that to me. So don't be surprised to see him get in the mix. Later in the evening, after New York really didn't show up for that game last night, trying to get physical, Sammy Blais, Ryan Reeves played a stupid game. Like I said, I think they'll rebound. I did not expect the Vancouver-Edmonton game to be the game that I enjoyed the most last night. However, it was. I found it compelling. And of all the teams that I watched over the first, there's been 8 games this far, these 2 teams look the most in midseason form. The back check, puck pressure, defenseman jumping into play, tape-to-tape passes. This game looked like a game in mid-January between 2 rivals. Was it the most physical game? No. But you saw just smart hockey, where Connor McDavid did get a point last night. He might have got 2. I'm just going to double check here. I know he got 1 for sure. I'll go figure. He got 2 secondary assists. But what I love from Vancouver is how they attacked him on the power play. Using their sticks, getting it in lanes. They didn't allow McDavid to be the focal point. Again, they got 2 secondary assists. He was not the focal point last night. But I thought they defended him really well. I watched Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Took a penalty early in the second period. Scores a power play goal, but did not look out of place. Connor Garland, Zach Hyman scoring in his opener. You saw a couple young defensemen for Vancouver really play well. Thatcher Demko and Mike Smith starting off the season as well as they could have. But I believe Vancouver can compete for the Pacific Division. I'm sure a lot of people believe Edmonton is right there and is probably the best team of Canada out west. Edmonton wins the game in the gimmick. I don't watch the gimmick. I watched the first 2 periods, third this morning, watched the overtime, shut it off when it goes to the gimmick because I just don't watch shootouts. But one guy who had a solid rookie campaign last year, quietly throughout all the COVID, throughout all the shit that the Vancouver Canucks went through last year, I look for this guy to have another really quiet, good season. That's Niles Hoglander for the Vancouver Canucks. He's a small guy in frame, but this dude can play. He's a guy that goes in the corners with his small body, but he comes out with the puck. He's creative. He back checks. He creates opportunities off the rush. And I think he can have a big campaign. He had a pair of points last night for Vancouver. And I look at him just say, this guy's just knows it. Primary assist on the power play. Primary assist on Quinn Hughes' tying goal with 2 minutes and 49 seconds remaining in the game. But Hoglander stood out to me. I look at Edmonton. Jesse Puljujarvi, when he first was drafted, he was talked about being a great pick for Edmonton. He had a terrible attitude. Had to go back over to Finland, learn English better, had to get in better shape, and really take it on the chin. But what I appreciate is that he came back over to North America and he didn't demand a trade out of Edmonton. He accepted where he was playing. And you know what they did? They put him on a line with Connor McDavid. And the guy is a physical power forward specimen. What I love for Edmonton is they have 2 guys that can really just go in the corner, get pucks. They play that physical game. They can get right in front of the goalie, right in front of the net, and score. Look at Puljujarvi's goal. It was a shot from the point. He grabbed the rebound, tucked it past Demko. That's what you want. Plus, he's super quick. Hyman is not as quick as Puljujarvi, but both these guys can be that what Hyman was for the Matthews-Marner line. They have 2 of those guys. McDavid will go chase the puck because he's so fast, but potentially you can save his energy for more creative plays because you have a Puljujarvi who will go in the corner, get the puck, continue the cycle, continue play for McDavid and co. Then you have Draisaitl with Yamamoto and Nugent Hopkins. I would put Hyman on one line and I'd have Puljujarvi on the other because I want both these lines to have an engine type player to go get the puck. I love that for Edmonton. They impressed me a lot. So did Vancouver because they had 2 goals in the third period being down 2-0. And I thought they played a pretty solid 40 minutes. And Demko was a superstar last night. The only goalie that played better last evening was John Gibson, who nearly blanked the Winnipeg Jets. But I thought the game was fantastic. I thought Niles Hoglander, Puljujarvi stood out to me. And another pair, a guy who looked great last night, who you think, hey, he's older, he's going to take a long time to get back in the swing of things. Duncan Keith. It took him a while. You didn't know if he's going to play. He didn't want to get the COVID vaccine. But he got it. And now I like him with CC. CC needs a reliable, dependable guy with him as a defense pairing. And another thing Dave Tippett did that was smart, he didn't break them up the entire training camp. They stayed together. So you know who you're going to play with come day one. And I thought the 2 of them played extremely well. But kudos, last night was a cool night. You get Hendrix Lapierre for Washington, scores first career NHL goal, and TJ Oshie basically threw him around like a rag doll after he scored it. Just a great moment. 18-year-old Mason McTavish got a goal and assist in his NHL debut for the Anaheim Ducks, the 3rd overall pick in that last year's draft. So you see a couple of youngsters get on the board. You see Jack Rathbone play for Vancouver after making the team out of camp. There were some really good stories. I mean, we got a lot of games this evening. Almost a full slate tonight. You got Canadian Sabres, Leafs, Senators, Penguins, Panthers, Dallas and New York, sneaky Islanders, Hurricanes, I think will be a good game. Arizona, Columbus, Tampa, Detroit, Seattle, Nashville, and Golden Knights, Kings. But the NHL is full on. Center ice is bought, purchased, and you just got to find games. And I think there's going to be good ones every night, but I thought that game was really good. I thought the hockey's been fairly consistent. The worst game so far was Tampa and Pittsburgh. We'll see what Tampa can do to rebound. Saturday night, they have Washington. Washington looked pretty strong last night and set the tone well without Nick Backstrom to start their campaign. But the NHL season is back, and it's now just about watching superstars. You can track their points, things of that nature. But it's also about seeing who are guys on the outside that could make a huge difference come April, come May, that can help us win a playoff series, that could be an X factor, that could be a Lars Eller, that could be a Devontae Smith-Pelly for the Washington Capitals, that could be a Dmitry Yaskin that was paramount, that could be Ivan Barbashev that was paramount to the St. Louis Blues winning the Stanley Cup. There's always those guys. Cam Talbot back in the days for for Pittsburgh. There's just guys that you see blend through. And I think for teams that even you want to, if you're a fan of the team, can they go deeper in the playoffs? A guy like Niles Hoglander for Vancouver is a guy that just stood out to me. Bowen Byram, can he have a big year? He's a great defense, but can he have a massive season for the Colorado Avalanche? Ian Mitchell on the point for Chicago. Can he have a season? These are all things we're gonna watch and track throughout this season, but it's fun to get it going, and we'll see where this year takes us. On Monday Night Football, it was Ravens against the Colts. We're getting close to halftime. Ravens haven't found their game yet. Lamar is about to go on one of the most epic comebacks that we've ever seen. He's about to tell Bill Polian and every other person that said he should switch to wide receiver or running back to shut up. But prior to that, it was announced that Jon Gruden resigned as head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders because of leaked emails from the Washington football team. Oddly enough, they did this inquiry into the Washington football team in the summer because of Dan Snyder and his inappropriate work environment that multiple women came forward to talk about, and the FBI got involved, and they did a probe, 650,000 emails. And this is the thing, the NFL had access to all these emails. And so that means they have access to everything. And there's likely, 650,000 emails. Jon Gruden, we'll get back to this. We'll start with this context. Jon Gruden was sending emails to Bruce Allen, who was the president of the Washington football team at the time. And he was working for ESPN doing Monday Night Football prior just till 4 years ago. So he was not employed by Washington. He's not employed by Vegas. He was an employee of ESPN or Mickey Mouse. And he's made some really inappropriate. He talked about DeMaurice Smith, the head of the NFL Players Association, calling him a monkey face, which, if you're not aware and you're not aware of pulp culture, that's about as derogatory as you can get about a black person. There's nothing that you could say, you could clarify that statement. It's just called derogatory. He said that it was a bad thing that women were being hired as officials and that they were getting hired as executives. And he also sent photos of the Washington Football League cheerleading team through emails. Apparently nude photos. Okay. He also said that the NFL and Jeff Fisher, the head coach of the St. Louis Rams at the time, should not be pressured into drafting Michael Sam. Michael Sam was the first openly gay player. He was in college playing at the University of Mizzou. He was co-defensive player of the year. He slid until the 7th round. Never worked out for him. I think being openly gay was a lot for Michael Sam. But Jon Gruden said, there's no place for, this was said, no place for queers in football. And for reference on the Las Vegas Raiders, currently, there's the first openly gay NFL player, Carl Nassib. He also, black people. He called the commissioner a pussy. There's a lot. And there's two really things that have to be talked about here. Number one, Jon Gruden resigned on Monday. On Friday, the Wall Street Journal released the email about DeMaurice Smith and that Jon Gruden called him a monkey face. That should have been it. He should have been fired after that, in my opinion. Because why did you have to add all this other information? He called somebody that. There's no explaining that one. There's no joke. That's just, it's called being derogatory. And I get it. People can call me a snowflake after listening to this, which whatever, we can have a conversation about it. But being openly racist is not okay anymore. This is not 20 years ago, 20, 30 years ago when our grandparents said colored people. You just don't say that anymore. That's not, we're changing for the better. He also, Jon Gruden said that Colin Kaepernick and Eric Reid should be fired for their stance on taking a knee. Now, I get this is a very topic that's fired so many people up. I've had conversations with my parents about it who were not in favor of it. I forever will support Colin Kaepernick because, in my opinion, it was never about the anthem. It was about talking about the black people that were getting killed and segregated against in the United States of America and throughout the world. The Black Lives Matter movement, George Floyd, and the other black people that have died have only proven Colin Kaepernick to be right and have vindicated him. So Jon Gruden should have been fired on Friday. It should not have to come where you have to leak more emails and do all this. But that's on Mark Davis. You should have talked to him on Friday. He should not have coached on Sunday. If you watch the team, you saw how uninterested they were. And I think they just had so much on their minds. If you're Carl Nassib, how do you function? I mean, how many? 77% of the NFL is African American. Most of his players are African American. How do you go to war for a guy that referred to another human being that you have the same facial features as, you have the same pigment, as a monkey face? That'd be very hard. And so Jon Gruden should have been fired before that. It's no decision. It's an easy one. You're gone. He should never be hired in the NFL again, in my opinion. Everybody does get second chances. Michael Vick did. Michael Vick, it was a different set of circumstances. I still don't like Michael Vick. I'm an animal lover. What he did to dogs is not okay with me. I love dogs. I have a dog. I always think I will. Dog fighting is not okay to me. But there's a bigger issue here. There's 650,000 emails that the NFL has found from this investigation into the Washington football team. And I have to credit Mina Kimes for saying this on NFL Live this week. She said this should only be the beginning because the other emails should be looked at and released. And she's absolutely right. She of ESPN, the mothership. You're telling me Jon Gruden has sent these emails to Bruce Allen and there hasn't been a response? You are not sending this type of vulgar language in emails to another human being unless you are comfortable with the person that you're sending it to, is that they're going to give you, number one, that they're going to be okay with it, and they're going to give you something like-minded in return. Somebody's not going to text me something with a racial or a bigoted sentence because they know I'm not answering the text and you're done with me. I'll say it like this. Would you, if you had a daughter and somebody sent you something really derogatory or called them a word that you really didn't like, how would you react to that? Not good, would you? You'd probably lash out. It's the same type of thing. And whether it's Bruce Allen, Daniel Snyder, the owner of the Washington football team, has been talked about for being a pig for a long time. With female staff that have come out and said this guy is a terrible person to work for. He makes us uncomfortable in the workplace. What's he saying in emails? 650,000. To me, those have to become known to the public. There has to be a further investigation. The NFL is saying they're not going to do it right now. So you know what this tells me? The NFL had some gripe against Jon Gruden. They didn't like Jon Gruden. And I don't know what that reason is. I think this is another potential really good story, Watergate-esque. Jon Gruden's just the first shoe to fall. But they have these emails. So if you piss off the league of another person and you're in this email chain, you're done. You're done. Because these were just leaked to the Wall Street Journal, meaning the NFL leaked them. I don't know why. Why was it Jon Gruden, who is not a member of the Washington football team staff, but I believe the NFL is covering up for Daniel Snyder. Roger Goodell, who is the NFL, basically. His bosses are 32 owners, one of them being Daniel Snyder. He's covering his ass. I just think we need to be transparent and fair. Jon Gruden should have been fired. He's gone. He said sexist, derogatory, racist things. And he got relieved of his duties for it. Good. That's old school thinking. But maybe I'm a cynic. But normally when you're texting another human being or emailing or conversing, you speak to people differently. I speak to my grandmother differently than I'd speak to my uncle or my close friends, because I wouldn't swear in front of my grandmother. I swear frequently when I'm not among older members of my family or even women. I speak differently. I think we just know that from culture. It's just when you see a person, even of, I spoke to my grandfather differently than I spoke to my grandmother. I tried not to swear in front of my grandmother. I knew I could swear around my grandfather because I grew up watching sports with the man. He would swear when the Tom Brady got intercepted. So if Jon Gruden was sending these emails, who's he sending them? You send them to Bruce Allen. How is Bruce Allen responding to this email? Because I don't think it's, John, you shouldn't be saying this. No. Is Daniel Snyder in this chain? He is the head of the Washington football team. 650,000 emails. What else is there? We need another Woodward and Bernstein to figure this out. But that's that issue. Yeah, this is a big topic today, but I think it's good to talk about. Now there's Kyrie Irving, the great point guard for the Brooklyn Nets, who is taking a stand. He's saying he's not going to get vaccinated. And the Brooklyn Nets said this week, okay, we respect your decision, but until you decide to get vaccinated, you're not going to be in team. You can't play. It's rules right now. If you don't have your vaccine, you can't play in New York. You can't play in San Francisco. You can't come to Canada. He would miss over half. He couldn't play in any home games this season or play at the Garden. The list goes on. Meaning he's a part-time player and you're really going to pay a guy part-time just to mope around. No. So they're saying, if you get vaccinated, you're welcome back. We'd love to have you. We got Kevin Durant. We got James Harden. We can go win a title here. These guys have gotten the vaccine. We all have. We took that sacrifice, but that's up to you. Now, first of all, I respect Kyrie's decision to not get the vaccine. That's his own personal decision. I don't need to hear him talk about it anymore because people just love to talk about why they're not getting it or why they did get it. Just shut up. Do what you got to do and do it. Shut up. However, what I do have a problem with is that he's saying before he was anti-mask and anti-vaccine, but now he's saying, no, I'm not anti-vaccine now. I'm not getting the vaccine because people who aren't getting the vaccine are losing their jobs. And I want to be the voice of the voiceless. It doesn't work with me. It just doesn't work. What about all the people that have died? They just didn't exist, or what? They didn't have a voice either. They died. Plus, you can make a personal decision and you live in a society. But when you're on a team, it could be workplace, it can be sports. There's a lot of different factors here. You need to sacrifice for the greater good. And when, let's say, 50 other individuals have made the decision to say, this is what's best for our team, normally you acquiesce. You do it because that's what's good for the team. To me, this tells me that Kyrie Irving just is not a team player. In Boston, the year he was injured, the Boston Celtics made it to the conference final. The next year, he played in the playoffs. They were out in the first round of 5 games. In Cleveland, he made it work with LeBron for 3 years, but eventually he just got retired and he left. But everywhere he goes, he's a nuisance. He's an irritant. He's not worth all the shit you have to get through with him. He can not get the vaccine. That's fine. But in society, we've been told there are, I think, people that complain about getting this vaccine like it's a dictatorship. When you get in your car, what do? You put on your seatbelt and you don't even think about it. It's just, oh, buckle in. When you get on a plane, what do? You put on a seatbelt. Your kids go to public school. What do? They get vaccines. They get needles. I got them. You do it with your kids. What's the difference between this one? I have a big head. I didn't grow a second or third one when I got the vaccine, I don't think. But my biggest thing is, I'm fine that you don't get it. For all the people, all my listeners that haven't got the vaccine, I'm fine with you guys too, because that's your own personal decision. And you're not in a team setting. I think that's different. However, if you've gotten it, if you didn't, please just shut up. I'm not going to talk about the vaccine much anymore unless Kyrie Irving keeps going on this podcast, which then I'll have to. But people really don't care if you got it or you didn't. Or don't write some topic on Facebook and then it starts a thread and there's this, oh. Nobody fucking cares. Live your life. T.I., live your life. And just good luck to Kyrie Irving. Because if you want to retire to prove a point, good, retire. But people are not going to care about you real quick. Guess what? You're not Michael Jordan. You're not LeBron James. You're not Magic Johnson. People care about you right now because you're one of the great basketball players in the game. You're not that great. You're the third best player between Kevin Durant and James Harden. They're both better than you. You're the third best player on a team that could win a championship. Great. You're Kevin Love. And people might say, okay, some people might say, oh, you're so great. And yeah, we're going to follow you but most people are just going to fade away. And people don't care what you're doing when you're not a basketball player. People always say, well, what's going to happen to pro sports when Tom Brady retires? I'll tell you what's going to happen. The NFL is going to move on. Did it move on when Joe Montana retired? Did it move on when Jerry Rice retired? When LT retired? All greats? Yeah. What's going to happen when Peyton and Tom and all these older Big Ben retires? A new wave of quarterbacks is going to come in. Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield, L. Jack. We're seeing it. What's happening? A new wave of youngsters. oh, the NFL will never be as popular without Peyton Manning and Tom Brady and Philip Rivers and Drew Brees. The NFL is more popular now than it ever has been. It's more popular right now than it was in the 90s. The ratings are killing. Pro sports moves on. Dougie Gilmour will always be a great in Toronto, but they're still going to play a game tonight. Barry Bonds was a great player. He was a drug cheat. People are still taking steroids. People forget about Barry Bonds. That's just how this works, Kyrie. People look, okay, there's Steph. There's James Harden. There's Kyle Lowry. There's a lot of other great guards. There's Ben Simmons. He's back in Philly. Okay. It just doesn't seem to be that difficult, but life moves on. It doesn't just stand still. I think for some athletes, they have such an inflated ego that they think, oh, well, when I retire, the world will just end. Well, for Kyrie, he'll think the world, it's flat. So you just roll off, or I really don't know what his thought process on the matter is. But yeah, good luck to him. But if you truly are steadfast and you're this big man and you want to stand up for the voiceless, don't get the vaccine now. Don't get it. Because if you say you're not getting it for 18 months and you're steadfast and it's not about the money, and well, if you get it, there's one word to describe you. It's coward. And there's a couple words. Coward, hypocrite, idiot. But if it's not about the money, it's about your family and your well-being, well, don't get it. You have that option. Don't hear me complain about it. I'm still going to watch the NBA. I'm still going to watch the NHL, even though Tyler Bertuzzi can't play in some games for the Red Wings. But hey, that's me. Maybe some people won't. I guess we'll see as we move on here. But looking ahead tonight, we got Eagles versus the Buccaneers on Thursday Night Football. No Gronk to beat up Tampa Bay defense. Tom Brady's dealing with a thumb issue, even though he will play this evening. I think we could see an interesting game potentially. The Eagles do have a good pass game. Dallas Goedert will be out after he tested positive for COVID. But Jalen Hurts has been airing the ball out. It's very tough to run against the Bucs defense, even though it's been struggling lately. The secondary isn't as great as it was. So you look at guys like Devontae Smith that potentially have a big game tonight. Jalen Reagor down the sideline. Zach Ertz is still in the lineup. Quez Watkins. So they do have receivers that can make an impact. If they could establish the run, that would be good. But that offensive line for Philly continues to get battered. Lane Johnson's injured now. Jason Kelce seems to be the only veteran that can stay healthy consistently on that offensive line. But for the Bucs, they look to improve to 5-1. Tom Brady had 5 touchdowns last week against Miami. And, they look still like one of the best teams in football. And I said before the season that I thought Tom Brady would win the MVP award. To me, he's right there. As of right now, you got, I think Lamar is in the mix, Herbert, Josh Allen, but, Tom Brady right up there for touchdown passes, got the most passing yards in the NFL and the best passer rating. And oddly enough for Tom Brady, he's 44. He's in his 22nd season. He is throwing more times per game than he ever has over the duration of his NFL career. He's throwing the ball over 42 times a game. It's the most he's ever thrown the ball. I worry about that long term because I do think their running game needs to be improved. They got Leonard Fournette, who's improving as a receiver. Ronald Jones seems to be a guy that just they don't trust. They don't play him very often on the field. But tonight's game should be fun. You get a football game. You got the NHL slate tonight. You got a football game. Also this evening, you have Game 5, Dodgers against the San Francisco Giants. The winner will go on to play the Atlanta Braves starting Saturday. But it was just announced that Julio Urias will actually he's coming in after the opener. Corey Knebel, the reliever, will start the game for the Dodgers. Then Urias will likely come in the second or third inning. Logan Webb will pitch for the San Francisco Giants. He pitched 7 innings in Game 1 of scoreless baseball. The Dodgers have been shut out twice so far this series, game 1 and game 3. But it's for all the marbles tonight to see who will advance, to see who can be a hero tonight in this storied rivalry. To go on, it would be Dodgers Braves, would be a rematch of last year's ALCS. And you got Houston and Boston on the other side of the draw. They will meet tomorrow in game 1. Game 2, Saturday afternoon. The starters for tomorrow night's game has not been announced yet for Houston and Boston. But baseball tonight, you got a full slate of hockey games. You got Bucks, Eagles. Should be a fun night. Like I said, I'll be joined by Matt Wright later this evening. That podcast will be available for you later. We'll talk, start the NHL season. We'll talk about Raiders, Rangers. We'll touch on who we think the best team in the NFL is. So after 5 weeks, and preview week 6 in the NFL for you. So as always, thank you all for listening. Hope you enjoyed the conversations today. Feel free to leave your comments and reach out, because everybody's voice should be heard, and everybody's got a voice on this platform. And unless, I just talked about what I don't enjoy, that won't be tolerated, and that will be getting rid of. But if you're anti-vaccine, that's fine too. It's called having a talk. I'm not against that at all. I like having these conversations. So everybody have a good Thursday night, and we'll talk to you soon.